For the month of December, get 25% off your first month or your first year of a membership to the Second Wind Patreon. Supporting independent games media means you get more biting games criticism like this. Another Game Awards has come and gone. A bunch of exciting games were announced, we got some heartfelt speeches and thanks from the people being honored, and, as is tradition, there was another helping of everyone arguing about what is or isn't an indie game. A question that nobody ever agrees on an answer for because, well, there's not really a definition for it. So, as this is the last big Unpacked script I'm writing before I go on break, I thought I'd take a shot at this discussion and then go hibernate with my two dogs until the new year rolls around and we start this all over again. To kick this off with a simple premise, I think there needs to be a distinction between an independent development team and a straight-up indie game. If you were to picture an indie game, the first thing you'd probably think of is a small pixel art adventure game inspired by Zelda. A good recent example would be Spindle, which we've covered on the channel previously. It was made by a 3-person development team based out of Germany and funded on Kickstarter. But wait, they do have a publisher, sort of, in the form of Deck 13 and their Spotlight program. Spotlight isn't a traditional publisher, but it offers a number of different marketing support services to the games they sign. Is that indie? Or how about Voidbreaker, which is a really solid FPS roguelite that was released into early access this year. The game is being made by Stubby Games, which consists of one developer, Daniel Stubbington. However, Voidbreaker has the full publishing support of Playstack behind it. Is that indie? There's also Chronos: The New Dawn, which is the latest game developed and published by Bloober Team. At one point, the now defunct publisher Private Division was set to publish it, but after their closure, Bloober took back the publishing rights and released it on their own. Bloober Team has around 250 people working for them. Is that indie? We're long past the days of independent games just being small pixel art games made by a few people bootstrapping development with their savings, funding from family and friends, and late-night ramen meals. Development tools have advanced and allowed smaller and smaller teams to make games that really stack up against their peers. Independently developed games are landing big publisher deals all the time. Visuals and vibes only tell part of the story these days. I think the game that best exemplifies how the term indie game is really just based on players' perceptions of what a game is at this point is Dave the Diver. It was nominated for Best Independent Game at the Game Awards in 2023, despite being made by a small team called Mint Rocket, within the mega publisher Nexon. There was nothing really independent about the game, which the developers themselves even noted as they were unsure how they were nominated for the award in the first place. I wonder if people mistook us for an indie studio just because we're developing games as a small team, or just because our art styles and game systems tend to be unique. For some reason, we also ended up getting nominated for Best Indie Game Award, which caused some people to go, hey, isn't that a Nexon game? But it's not like we applied for the award ourselves. The same conversation was held around Larian Studios and Baldur's Gate 3. The company is independent, but it does have investment from Tencent, who sits on their board of directors. In an interview with Bloomberg, Larian founder Swen Vink explained that he and his wife still own the majority of shares of Larian, but Tencent has a significant stake in the company now. That additional support gave them the resources necessary to make a game like Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 was also licensed by Hasbro as they control the Dungeons & Dragons IP. As of today, Larian has over 500 employees spread throughout the world, and Baldur's Gate 3 was a massive hit for Larian, having reached over 20 million copies sold this year. This year, the conversation around what is actually indie has been focused on Expedition 33 and its developer, Sandful Interactive. While the core team is about 30 people, there's over 400 people listed in the game's credits. Expedition 33 had the backing of publisher Kepler Interactive, used a lot of outsourcing to help with development, and had a development budget of around $10 million, which most likely doesn't include its marketing or talent costs, which would have been handled by Kepler. The game has been continually swept up in the "is it indie" conversation throughout 2025, even though the development team, much like the team behind Dave the Diver, never claimed to be an indie studio. Personally, I feel like the term indie has, for the most part, outgrown its usefulness. Any studio that doesn't have a parent company attached to it is technically indie, independent, whatever you want to call it. But there's so much money in games these days, being independent could mean you're making games with the pocket change you find in the washing machine. Or it can mean you sign a multi-million-dollar deal with Disney to make the next Star Wars game. Argonaut Studios, which just announced Star Wars The Fate of the Old Republic at the Game Awards, is an independent studio with the publishing deal of LucasArts. Fuse Games, also an independent studio, is making Star Wars Galactic Racer. Both of these games, I'm sure, have very different budgets and team sizes. If we're really going to argue over the semantics of an indie game versus an independently published game, then an indie game would be made and published by the same person. That person would be responsible for every part of a game's production: funding, code, visuals, sounds, etc. They may have help in marketing, localization, and testing, but the game itself would be entirely made and funded by the sole developer. Everything else is just a game made by an independent studio. Whether it's 5 to 10, 25 to 50, or 100 plus people, if the studio isn't owned by a publisher, then it's an independent studio. I don't think it needs to be any more complicated than that in how we delineate what's an indie game versus an independent studio. And even then, I really don't think it matters all that much at the end of the day. I don't think the industry wants to go down the path of measuring people's achievements based on how much a game costs to make, the amount of people that worked on it, or what publisher was behind it. If we do that, we're going to have categories at the Game Awards based on the budget level of a game, or how many people made it rather than judging the merits of the work alone. We're already purity testing what counts as an indie game, and breaking things down in that way would only serve to amplify that problem, I think. To me, it's more impressive to have games like Expedition 33, Hollow Knight Silksong, and Death Stranding 2 nominated in the same Game of the Year category. It makes plain as day that no matter how much backing a game has, a Game of the Year caliber title can come from anywhere. Yes, even Kojima Productions is an independent studio. In truth, the best independent game category may be what's actually irrelevant these days, because the vast majority of games are now coming from independent studios, and not the major publisher groups. It doesn't really mean much to be independent anymore because game development has been democratized to the point you can download Unreal Engine at any time and start making a game, thus making you an indie developer. So, as we circle back around to what is an indie game, well, I suppose it means what you want it to at this point, and ultimately, it doesn't matter. Games are never truly judged by how they were made, but by the end result. The details on how they were made are interesting and inspiring, but are you, the player, going to judge a game differently after you've played it based on if it was made by one person or 500 people? Or if a solo developer had a $50,000 budget versus a $1 million budget? Probably not. You may appreciate the work put into it more when a developer doesn't have the resources of someone more well off, but it ultimately doesn't have an impact on your enjoyment of the final product. The argument over what is an indie game will never have a definitive answer because everyone has a different metric, definition, or label for it. Games are made under a million varying circumstances and have their own unique stories. And that's the beauty of the games industry.